Okay, well, it's now 1 minute past 11, so I think this is a good time to start. So welcome everybody to this online Orbit South Coast event. My name's Adrian Hopgood. I'm director of the South Coast Centre of Excellence in Satellite Applications. We are hosted at the University of Portsmouth, jointly funded by the UK Space Agency, the Satellite Applications Catapult, and the University of Portsmouth. Our role is to promote space-related business opportunities, and we assist in initiating new projects that exploit satellite data and technologies. The topic of today's event is around space clusters, so it's perhaps topical for me to mention that we're really excited to have just launched a new initiative, Space South Central, which sees our centre working with the University of Portsmouth and the University of Surrey in a space cluster covering Surrey, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So we're at spacesouthcentral.com if you want to check out our new cluster. So we're delighted that today's event highlights clusters, and it's an opportunity to look beyond our region and highlight opportunities for pan-regional collaborations. A few points of housekeeping before I introduce our speakers today. This session is being recorded and it will be put on our YouTube channel after the event. You should see that on your Zoom screen there is a Q&A box. I would ask you please to put any questions there, and we can raise those with the presenters after their presentations. There is also a chat box which you might like to use to introduce yourselves, just to say who you are on this online event. So moving on then to today's programme. Unfortunately, our speaker, Alan Davies from Space Wales, is unable to join us, but nevertheless, we have two great speakers lined up to emphasise this kind of pan-regional cluster theme of today. We're going to start with Joel Freedman, Regional Innovation Manager at the Satellite Applications Catapult, and he's going to be followed by Alan Cross, Development Manager at the new Southwest Space Cluster. And Alan is actually familiar with Space Wales, so he might say a few words about Space Wales as well, since Alan Davies is unable to join us. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over now to Joel and invite you to share your screen, please.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Okay, so let me share my screen and hopefully everybody can see that. I'm just going to assume that's a yes.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Joel Freedman. I'm the Regional Innovation Manager at the Satellite Applications Catapult. I work as part of the Catapult's National Capabilities and Clusters team. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about who the Satellite Applications Catapult is, what the National Capabilities and Clusters team is here to do, and how we may be able to support you as space technology innovators. So the Satellite Applications Catapult is a partly government-funded technology and innovation company set up to stimulate and support the growth of the UK space sector. We are independent, we are not for profit, and we are trying to use space to make the world a better place. We do this broadly in three ways. Energizing markets, empowering technology, and enabling business. That's from our corporate slide deck. In normal human language, I think that means that we help non-space sectors and markets identify areas where space technology and data could add some real value. Empowering technology is supporting R&D of new technologies, looking for barriers that might exist to growth, such as access to facilities, and hardware for SMEs or our regulation, and thinking through how we can help to remove some of those barriers and support new technology development. And finally, I'm working with businesses to help with their strategic thinking, technology development, or signposting them to relevant support. So we may act as collaborators in joint consortiums or supporting technology development projects as well, more as a kind of consultant. So we work across a whole range of market sectors that some may not initially associate with space, working with many industry groups, end users and innovators looking to get into these markets and help match the space and space-enabled capabilities with the specific opportunities that we get from end user communities. And cutting across all of these, we have some kind of themes that underpin our activities, such as working towards net zero, promoting equality, diversity and inclusion in the sector, and supporting regional growth in all parts of the UK. As you might expect, we also focus on the space technology side too. So ubiquitous connectivity, supporting always-on communications for autonomy, for Internet of Things services, or data-rich on-the-go applications. Geospatial intelligence, so accessing and analyzing data from a whole range of sensors in orbit, both free and commercial, and working with sort of ground station data transfer and storage. There's access to space, so working with satellite manufacturers, spaceports in the UK, and future space missions, which is the sort of emerging areas of in-space services, such as material manufacturing, microgravity, space debris removal, asteroid mining or lunar mining, and that type of thing. It's also almost always the case that solutions that are empowered by space technology also include other technologies too, such as robotics, AI, 5G, drones, autonomous systems. And so as such, we try and work with these technologies and kind of providers of those as well, from kind of research to commercial, in order to explore where some of these crossover areas are too. All of these are aligned with the National Space Strategy, which came out recently, which to a certain extent is going to be acting as a bit of a North Star from our perspective, as to the type of capability that we want to support the UK to develop. So hopefully everybody's read that, but if you haven't, it definitely gives a good indication of the sorts of things that are going to be funded and promoted by government. There is a lot of space activity happening across the UK, and this map is constantly evolving. It's probably already out of date, even though it was updated quite recently. We work in partnership with the UK Space Agency to support the growth of space clusters and hubs in an increasing range of locations. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that in a moment. And shortly, there is going to be a funding call for cluster development, which is going to support leadership teams to grow their clusters, to support game-changing projects and collaborations from across the UK, and new infrastructure opportunities. So watch out for that. I think we're expecting something to drop in sort of August, mid-August. We're also working closely with the European Space Agency and Department for International Trade, specifically around looking for areas of funding for technology development, inward investment opportunities, and exporting of UK services abroad. So the National Capabilities and Clusters team, which I'm a part of, so we have a vision to create a thriving and connected UK space ecosystem. We put this together to try and explain succinctly what our team is for and what we're here to do. So we want to grow productive space clusters that are connected as part of a community that works together to build national capability that's in line with the National Space Strategy and stimulating the growth of new and existing businesses. And there are three ways that we aim to do this. So the first is supporting the leadership teams of different space clusters to develop their own growth strategies, to be better connected to each other, as well as finding means of ensuring that we're representing these clusters and capabilities internationally. The second is leveraging our network of universities across the UK and local government and public sector organisations by bringing together different stakeholder communities, across industry, government, academia, for knowledge exchange and collaborative opportunities. And finally, stimulating the development of national capabilities by developing support services to businesses around commercialization, scale up, technology development, and helping different locations identify infrastructure and innovation facilities that could add value to the landscape. So things that might remove barriers, help local businesses access critical equipment, and generally support business growth. Briefly, when we talk about clusters, we tend to think of them in three ways. The first is local clusters that bring together local universities, public sector, businesses, in order to bring together space capability and identify areas of local priorities where space can add value. The second is superclusters or space partnerships, where different local clusters join together to create larger entities with more convening power, broader capabilities, and can have a bigger voice both nationally and internationally. Space South Central is a great example of the latest one of these that we've seen. The last are thematic or virtual clusters, and these bring together different stakeholders from across the UK who have shared interests, expertise, and ambitions in specific areas. So that might be healthcare, agri-tech, launch, or renewable energy. These can be great for forming pan-UK collaborative projects for sort of big bits of game-changing technology development as well. So we try and help to facilitate and stimulate the growth of those as well, so everyone knows where all the other people are who are interested in the same things as them. So how do we do this? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the activities that we have going on at the moment that may be of interest to you. So first, there is the Space Enterprise community. This is an online platform that was born from the fact that as this ecosystem was growing, we were finding that people were maybe missing out on funding opportunities, collaborative projects, or events simply because they weren't in the right conversation or meeting, especially since the takeoff of virtual meetings, where you aren't just limited to what's in your local area, you can actually attend relevant meetings from all over the UK, and this is a great example of that. So we created a platform that anyone can sign up to, where members can post funding opportunities, events, collaborations, as well as other discussions, where we can create thematic groups, and you can search for people across the network by areas of focus or expertise. The space agencies are on there, we're on there constantly posting about opportunities, so please do sign up. You can go to spaceenterprise.uk to do that. And we also run a virtual networking event called Satchino. It's hybrid, I think it's in person at Harwell and virtual on the first Wednesday of every month, where you can hear more updates from across the sector, from industry, public sector, and space agencies as well. As well as an online platform, we've created a network of physical innovation spaces, which is a fancy term for saying meeting rooms that are set up to support in-person and virtual working. So they have video conferencing kit, virtual and physical whiteboards, large touchscreens, and VR headsets for bringing the virtual into the physical, and vice versa. These are specifically set up for businesses and leadership groups in the sector, in the space sector, or using space technology, who are looking for a place to meet with customers or clients, have project meetings, discuss proposals, or talk about space strategy, and even run events. There's a whole number of them around the UK, and there's more coming. If you would like to access your local Space Enterprise lab, then you can just go through the booking form that's on the Space Enterprise community website. We have a UK space capabilities catalogue that you can find on the Catapult's website, which outlines the capability that the UK has in different areas, and whilst it's not complete, it's constantly being updated. It gives a great view as to where different capabilities are located, which can be useful for planning collaborations, and was actually originally conceived because when we were working internationally, people would ask us, well, what capability does the UK have in different areas? and there wasn't a single source of truth. So this was a way of sharing that with potential partners and investors abroad. So if you're not included but would like to be included, please reach out to us and we can make sure that you are in there. And finally, we have a range of innovation services set up to support businesses, both large and small, as well as local leadership teams. We have access to a network of technical facilities all across the UK, as well as technical experts that can help you answer questions, signpost you, help you along your sort of TRL development journey from the ground up into space or back. We have business strategy support services where we bring together teams of business strategists, designers, technical experts to provide targeted business advice. There are a few limited, fully paid up spaces for these, and there's also a number of other ways you can access these through other funding, such as Innovate UK Edge as well. We have prototype development services, such as the Space Commercialization Engine in Leicester, that's focused on EO applications, but we have similar types of activities at Westcott that are there to help you identify the right bits of technology. So in Leicester, it's the right type of Earth observation data to meet your needs and help you develop prototypes that can then be used to test with end users. So it's not building a whole product for you, but it's helping you move along the TRL journey. We can facilitate partnerships across our academic network, collaborative R&D projects, KE fellowships, researchers and residents, secondments, internships, etc. And we run events, like I said, Satachino, and to help you network with relevant businesses, industry leaders, and hear what's happening. And lastly, we run opportunity exploration workshops that are either looking at how technology can be, how can benefit large industries or different sectors. So a bit of that emerging markets stuff that I talked about right at the beginning, but also looking at where there may be opportunities for local stakeholders to identify facilities or big interventions that might benefit the region as well. And when we do these opportunity exploration sessions, it's normally, if it's with some new market, we'll then want to share that out with industry and hopefully set up some kind of collaborative call to meet the needs that have been identified in those sessions. So thank you very much for your time. If you'd like to find out more, I would definitely encourage you to visit spaceenterprise.uk and sign up. But other than that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that I can here today as well. So yeah, thank you for your time. I'll stop sharing my slides.
Thank you very much, Joel. That's great. Really interesting presentation. We do have some questions appearing in the Q&A box. So there's one from Alan Whiteside, who says, do the local space clusters partner with other local clusters in areas like healthcare, agriculture, etc.? Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that has been happening as the clusters have been emerging, but also something that's going to be more encouraged with some of these funding calls that are coming out. So I think we've seen collaborations around healthcare between Cornwall and the Highlands and Islands sort of cluster and activity, where you have sort of shared environments and shared challenges. It can be a really good opportunity to develop technology that can be kind of trialed and tested in multiple locations. So yes, absolutely, we want to see more collaboration around these areas, because really developing local clusters is great in terms of developing capability and surfacing what exists in different areas. But when it comes to actually the development of services and capabilities, it's the partnerships around some of these bigger areas like healthcare and agriculture, which is going to see the emergence of larger scale capability development and applications. Thank you. And you mentioned geographical range there. So Alan did have a follow-up question actually saying that he's 4 hours away from Edinburgh and Glasgow. So will there be more hubs in Scotland? Presumably it's not quite clear, but I guess Alan is in Scotland, but quite a long way from those major centres of Edinburgh and Glasgow. Yes, so I think there is going to be
there's another cluster that's emerging on the north coast. I think that's going to be called the North Coast Cluster, Highlands and Moray at the moment, and I think that's forming around the fact that there's a lot of launch activities happening, but the chances are there'll be other focus areas as well. So as that cluster forms, there'll be a growth of potential hubs, locations, spaces where you can go and meet with people and then connect into the broader ecosystem as well.
Thank you. And oh, hang on, Alan's followed up. What about regional partnerships? Regional partnerships rather than thematic clusters. So you mentioned the Highlands and Cornwall links could be rural health, renewable energy, aquaculture, etc. Yeah, so I don't know if you're able to comment on that.
I think from our perspective, we wanted to encourage a whole mix of things. So we want there to be regional partnerships between, like I said, areas that have these shared landscapes as well, and kind of challenge profiles. We also want to see the thematic clusters, and it's probably different people in different clusters. The thematic ones could be, clusters of researchers and businesses developing certain things, or potentially big industry primes who are interested in those. The regional clusters may be the leadership teams of different clusters looking at how to support collaborative projects and events and raise awareness. So for us, it's not necessarily an either or. We're trying to support all types of clusters and partnerships that are driving towards this kind of growth in capability aligned with the national space strategy and kind of national priorities, but also supporting the local priorities, whether that's healthcare, agriculture, marine as well.
Thank you, Joel. And you mentioned the national space strategy in your answer there, and you also mentioned it in your presentation. Could you say a little bit more about how the clusters do support the national space strategy? What does it help deliver in regards to the national space strategy?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So the space strategy is split into, there are kind of pillars, and there's a 10-point plan, and there's technology focus areas. I think one of the core things is that it talks about growing world-class space clusters across the UK. So there's a recognition that these space clusters are going to drive space activity. But there's a list of technical capabilities that the government wants the UK to be leading on, and that ranges from communications, Earth observation, navigation services, professional services, some of the things we have strength in, and then some of the emerging areas. So more on the access to space and microgravity services, renewable space energy, and things like that. So those will probably form the basis of where there are funding calls that come out to develop new technologies. They will be in the directions of the national space strategy as well. So from a cluster perspective, where there are strengths that align to some of those areas, it can be a really good opportunity to look out for some of those funding calls, some of those collaborative opportunities to be part of bigger kind of national capability development. And then there are some other cross-cutting themes like driving net zero space activities. So I think there's an opportunity to really look forward and think about how do all parts of our supply chain drive towards net zero, whether that's the launch and the actual fuels, but also the materials that are going into manufacturing satellites, and then the environmental impact in space as well. So what are we doing with our sort of space debris? So it acts as a bit of a kind of guide for where the direction the UK is going to be going, and something quite useful from a cluster perspective to gauge against the strengths and activities that you might be driving, and maybe even prioritize some of those based on which ones align most with what the government has laid out as its priorities for space capability development.
That's great. Thank you very much, Joel. I think at this point we'll move on then to our next speaker. But thank you very much, and we might maybe open up a discussion with our speakers at the end as well. So our next speaker I'm delighted to introduce is Alan Cross, who's Development Manager of the recently formed Northwest Space Cluster. So Alan, over to you.
Thanks, Adrian. Can you hear me there?
You're breaking up a little there, but
can everyone hear me?
Yeah. Are you able to share your screen?
Well, rather unfortunate. Hopefully not. Yep, I'll do that now. Hopefully, it's just told me my internet is unstable, which is tremendously useful when you're about to start presenting. Let me see. There you go. Can you see that and can you hear me?
I can hear you. It says
Okay,
it's
I'll crack on
screen.
anyway.
It says it started screen sharing, but I can't actually see the screen just yet. Oh, it's on now. Okay, it's working now.
Okay, let's hold on. There we go. Great stuff. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. My name's Alan Cross. I'm the development manager of the newly launched Northwest Space Cluster, based out of SciTech Daresbury, which is the sister site to Harwell in the Liverpool City region. Although we are not a campus-based cluster, we are a regional cluster, which I'll give you a little more information on. So clusters at STFC. The way we define clusters are, this is a way to grow an innovation ecosystem with critical mass in the sector. The way this has been done traditionally was initially at Harwell with the Space Cluster, which was launched in 2010. And you can see on the left there that those Harwell space clusters, so space and health tech and energy tech, they're based on a campus model. So they have a very clear definition of businesses who are located on that campus who are working in this sector. And STFC, for those who don't know, that's the Science and Technology Facilities Council, also a part of UKRI. Essentially, we have all the big science infrastructure. So Diamond Light Source of Square Kilometre Array for the Large Hadron Collider, that sort of thing. So we realized that actually we had an opportunity to support the development of sectors located in geographically specific areas. And so the Harwell kind of model started to develop around 2010 and was very successful. And as you can see there was rolled out to assist with health technologies and with energy technologies. Here in the Northwest, we do have a very nice campus. Currently sat looking out over a very pleasant canal and rural surroundings, to expand that cluster model so that it became a regional development model. That started with the health technology, the Northwest Health Tech Cluster a few years ago. So this is based, yes, out of Daresbury, but it covers Cheshire, Liverpool, Manchester, and I believe Lancashire. Very successfully pulling in different stakeholders, different universities, different campuses and businesses, and whoever was in the region and was working in this sector was then brought in and was supported through this cluster model successfully, might I add. And then it was rolled out to the digital technology cluster last year. And then another evolution of that was the Northwest Space Cluster. So the Northwest, yes, is home to the global headquarters of the Square Kilometre Array, the Astrophysics Research Institute at John Moores University, for example. We do have companies like Teledyne and their satellite composites businesses based here. But what we actually have is a lot of parallel business. So the Northwest builds all of Britain's stealth fighters, the F-35, all of Britain's nuclear submarines. We've got advanced defence electronics, a substantial cybersecurity offering. This is why GCHQ is moving a third of its workforce to central Manchester. It's why the National Cyber Force, which would be Britain's offensive cyber capabilities, has been stood up in Lancashire. And so what the evolution of the cluster model in this sense was that rather than simply stepping in to support an existing ecosystem, it was about, can we promote and foster the development of an ecosystem? Because space is such a clear opportunity, because it's such a long-term investment with really exciting futures ahead of it. Can we help businesses and researchers in the Northwest, one, who are already in space, work in space and do more, but also help those businesses that are with parallel capabilities pivot into the sector, thereby driving economic and societal growth across the region. So that is the core of what the Northwest Space Cluster is here for. It is supported, as I say, delivered by the Science and Technology Facilities Council, but on the stakeholder leadership group, we have the UK Space Agency, the Satellite Applications Catapult, other UK research and innovation councils, and critically, the local enterprise partnerships and combined authorities of the region. So that's Cumbria, Lancashire, Greater Manchester, the Liverpool City region, and Cheshire and Warrington. Beyond that, to engage businesses, we have the Northwest Business Leadership Team, the Northern Space Consortium, the Northwest Aerospace Alliance, which represents 25% of the country's aerospace sector. At the Square Kilometre Array, a large multinational organisation there, and of course the Innovation Caucus, which is actually based down in Oxford. So this is the central leadership team that enables and keeps an eye on the cluster and helps to guide it. However, it is not the cluster. What is the cluster? What does it look like? The Northwest Space Cluster looks nothing like that. This is not a campus-based model. There are places within the cluster that look like that. Daresbury, where I'm based, most certainly looks like that. But what we have is a constellation of capabilities from the north of Cumbria to the south of Cheshire. These include RAF stations, in this case, the largest electronics warfare range in NATO, universities, Sellafield, down through Lancashire, where we built the F-35, massive quantum and cyber capabilities across the universities there, the Liverpool City region, Greater Manchester, and down into Cheshire. And in the south there, you can see the Square Kilometre Observatory, HQ at Jodrell Bank. So the Northwest Space Cluster is about connecting these capabilities, helping them to maximize what they're already doing and helping businesses to either pivot into the space sector or to establish themselves fresh in the space sector, and to help researchers understand how space affects them. So this is our vision. We've, with help from, with funding rather, from the UK Space Agency over the last 2 years, we've put together a Northwest Space Strategy. There's no point us in the Northwest talking about launch because we have no launch capability. There's no launch sites here. And so we need to focus very sharply on how we develop our space economy for 2 reasons. One, leadership in the Northwest traditionally hasn't considered space to be a growth area. So how do we help them contextualize what space means, but also promoting our capabilities outside of the region to the national industry and internationally as well. So our market strengths to lead on that we've identified are cyber and defense. Now, of course, a lot of people talk about cyber security, but to reiterate, GCHQ is moving 1/3 of its workforce to central Manchester, and the National Cyber Force is standing up in Lancashire. So how can we use space to turbocharge that cybersecurity industry, not just in the use of data from space and cybersecurity, but also the emerging cyber threats that we'll see for large-scale satellite constellations in orbit, also beyond low Earth orbit around the Moon and Mars. Energy, environments, and climate technologies. Of course, the Lake District is a huge part of Cumbria. So how can we use that as a living testbed to enable these technologies? We see in Manchester, for example, really strong growth in the fintech sector. A lot of this is around insurance, decarbonisation, carbon credits, this sort of thing. How can we use data from space in order to really enable these businesses to hit the market right? And also in advanced materials, of course, Manchester is the home of graphene. And so how can we use our expertise in advanced materials to enable the space sector to take advantage of that? Moving out in the concentric circle, we have strength in health and life sciences, in advanced manufacturing, engineering and electronics, and broader digital and next generation computing. A question earlier from Alan Whiteside was around how do clusters interact? Do they interact with each other? Here at Daresbury, we have the health tech cluster, the digital tech cluster, and the space cluster. We all work very closely together. I'll say later on that there's no point reinventing the wheel. If work is being done by one cluster with one group of companies that benefits space, or space could benefit them, or life sciences, etc., then we ensure that we work closely together. And again, moving that concentric circle out again. We have frontier research capabilities in the region in astrophysics, in nuclear and space, and in robotics and autonomous systems. So how can we be tilling the soil to make sure that those frontier research capabilities are going to be able to generate societal and economic growth in the future? So we aim to be market and challenge led, to be technology orientated, and to be proactively nurturing talent, skills, and knowledge, and to be cohesive and coordinated in our actions. In terms of skills and talents, we are starting conversations. The cluster is very young. It's only about 3 weeks old. We are starting conversations with the Women's Organisation and with the Anthony Walker Foundation in Liverpool, which is an anti-racism charity, with the Michael Causer Foundation, which is supports LGBTQ plus youth. How can we ensure that we are inclusive as possible in order to support skills for the industry moving forwards? So we are looking to, we have established the Northwest Space Cluster, and we will establish it as the convening mechanism to drive collaboration and competitive advantage. This is not the stakeholders I pointed out earlier are not the cluster. STFC is not the cluster. It is the businesses, and it is the researchers, and it is the users of space in this region that make up the cluster. So then how do we export what we're good at? As I say, we're very good at defense electronics. We're very good at cybersecurity. We're very good at astrophysics. How do we export our existing strengths in the context of the space sector? How do we then evolve those capabilities to ensure that we're enabling parallel industries to cross over? And this means about supporting R&D to drive productivity, increasing investment, helping entrepreneurs establish, making the Northwest a good place to establish a space business. And critically, how do we embed the opportunities presented by space within our local communities? How do we ensure valuable jobs for local communities? How do we ensure that services that are enabled by data from space are used to make people's lives better? So these are some of the metrics that we will be using to measure how well we're doing. Economic activity, of course, is critical. It's interesting that in the last Size and Health survey that was released, the Northwest leapt from 14th out of 14 to 6th out of 14. Our economic turnover increased 275% in a single year. Not necessarily because of an increase in economic activity, but because of the work of the cluster to help businesses understand that they are working in space and to encourage them to engage with the mechanisms that central government uses to measure these things. We were essentially uncovering existing economic activity. So some of our capabilities in terms of research are as follows: space systems engineering at Manchester with aerodynamics, of course, with graphene and materials and structures. We have significant robotics. The First Space Hub, for example, one of the lead partners on that is Salford University. I'm sat just a few meters away from the Hartree National Centre for Digital Innovation. This is the largest industry-facing supercomputer that is available in the UK, managed by STFC. Just received a £210 million grant to upgrade its systems to make it ready for quantum. Of course, I've touched on cybersecurity. We have the Earth observation. Astrophysics is, of course, significant here with the existence of the Square Kilometre Array. But there's so much more. These are research and university capabilities that have very clear applications for space. But we also talk to, for example, in the University of Cumbria, where they have a Centre for National Parks. They have a focus on rural health, on rural economies. We're working with them to ensure that space is embedded in their thinking and vice versa, that when we are looking at space applications, we are considering and understanding their research and their work to maximize the potential across the board. But let's not reinvent the wheel. There is absolutely no point in us coming up with a whole array of snazzy new initiatives and projects that are in competition with others. So for example, these are existing programs: ESA Space Solutions, the Satellite Applications Catapult was just heard from there, programs within the UK and European space agencies such as ARTES and NAVIS, GSTP. But then local initiatives. Boost is a digitization initiative from Lancashire LEP. So how do we make sure that we are supporting local LEPs, local combined authorities, in their growth strategies, using the mechanisms that they've already got in place? This includes things like Sprint as well. And critically, this is why I'm here today, collaboration with other sectors, with other regions, and with other clusters. With regards to other clusters, I've done a fair bit of work with Portsmouth in my previous role as ESA Business Applications Ambassador, and I'm very pleased that we're continuing that relationship as we see today. I also sit on the Space Wales Leadership Group. Unfortunately, Alan, who's the development manager, couldn't be there today. So because, of course, the Northwest, certainly with Liverpool and Cheshire, borders North Wales, we're ensuring that there is porous borders, that we're working across these boundaries to make sure that we are collaborating where possible and well, competing where necessary, of course. We also have Space North, which was touched on in one of the graphics earlier, which is the Northwest Space Cluster, Space Hub Yorkshire, and the Northeast Centre of Excellence from the Satellite Applications Catapult, working together to be greater than the sum of our parts, ensuring that when we are looking at foreign direct investment, we are working together to promote our combined capabilities. In terms of collaboration with other sectors, we're quite fortunate because in the Northwest, our health tech cluster development manager, Phil Carville, his background is in space medicine. He, for his PhD, he built a skin suit that provides spinal compression for astronauts that flew on the space station. So he has a background in understanding how space and medicine interact. When we look at the digital tech cluster, our cluster manager there, James, has a background in finance and in investment, so we can draw on lots of different capabilities and expertise, and that's just within the cluster team here in this building that we're based in. We then look at wider sectors that maybe we don't have a cluster for, but that are emerging, that have strengths. So we are very eager to maximize the benefit for everyone. From the Northwest perspective, yes, this is about developing our local economy and societal development, but we do that by servicing the national economy. We do that by making sure that we're interfacing well with the national space strategy and with the defense space strategy and with international concerns as well. One of the reasons I speak to you is because it's not only about us doing space, but it's about us using space. What I discovered in my years as the ESA Business Applications Ambassador is while the Northwest has huge amounts of ports and maritime and offshore energy, we don't create many of the services that are used there. But I know the South Coast does. And so I want to ensure that, of course, I prefer it if the services were created here in the Northwest, but let's support you guys. We have users and customers here in the Northwest in all of these themes that you can see there and more. And so if you are developing services that are involved with ports and maritime and coastal defense and national parks and flood mitigation and nuclear energy and logistics and urban planning and rural connectivity, we need you. We need these services. So I'm going to put my details up with a QR code shortly for you to get in touch with me. Let's start to build these connections to make sure that we're supporting each other right the way across the board. And there's that QR code and my email address. That QR code will give you direct access to the Northwest Space Strategy, so you can get a better idea of our thinking and how we plan to move forward. Please email me directly. And if there are any questions or criticisms, anything, I'll take them now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. I don't know if there are any questions for Alan. There is a question posted in the Q&A box, but in a way it doesn't necessarily, it seems like it might be more directed to me from the South Coast Centre of Excellence in satellite applications rather than Alan, but it's complimentary. It says this is an excellent initiative. Is there similar work underway in other space clusters, and what are the cross-sectoral focus for the South Coast Centre. So for the South Coast Centre, we have been looking at three key sort of sectors. We've been looking at transport and logistics, autonomous systems, and offshore assets, things like wind farms and so forth offshore, which have been sort of priority themes, not exclusive, of course, but priority themes. As we move forward, we're looking at focusing on two sort of broad themes, which are quite all embracing, around what we call blue space, which is really exploiting our location with a strong marine maritime industries, ports, shipping, issues around water quality, coastal protection, defense, security, aquaculture, and marine renewable energies on the one side. And then, so that's our kind of blue space, but also looking at green space, and the sort of renewables taps into that with resource management, climate action, sustainable ecosystems, transportation, clean energy, etc. So those are the kind of themes that we're focusing on in the South Coast Centre. But as I say, these are not kind of exclusive, but they're a way of highlighting priority areas for us. I don't know if there are any other questions for Alan, or in that matter, for that matter, our other panelist, Joel. I mean, if I may, Alan, what you mentioned that your cluster's only been going for a matter of 3 weeks, I think you said. So so hard to put you on the spot as to what you've achieved so far. But maybe what I should ask is what you think is needed to help you deliver the vision that you've outlined for the cluster.
Thanks, Adrian. Well, we have had some interesting developments already. So companies have kind of come out of the woodwork who are not just adjacent to space, but who are absolutely engaged in space. They're doing projects for ESA. Various organizations have come out of the woodwork and said, how long's there been a space cluster? We didn't know you were here. We thought we were on our own. And so I think that the message for that is, as soon as you start to talk about this publicly, as soon as you can set up a clear framework of support, people will self-identify. People will step forward either because they are interested in learning more or because they've been doing this on their own for so long. Now, I think you're quite fortunate down on the South Coast because you've got such a strong presence with both Portsmouth and Southampton, and of course Surrey with Surrey Satellite and University there. That it's maybe a little more visible for your businesses and researchers down there, but that you've joined forces and are very clearly talking about supporting businesses. I think that's excellent, and they have that will turn the dial up on how things work. In terms of supporting us and how we can move forward, we're looking at a few initiatives at the moment, which I won't go into too much detail about because I don't want to give it away in early days, which will look at leveraging capabilities within the Northwest to respond to various funds and opportunities. But where we can't do that, we will be reaching out to other clusters. We will be trying to avoid going to the major primes and the familiar names. We want to help regions and businesses and sectors and clusters that are trying to find their own place in space. We want to help them bootstrap their way in. So in the coming weeks, months, years, I expect quite a lot of collaboration from cluster to cluster, from region to region.
Thank you, Alan. And a question has been posted by Prasant, who says, could you please share some interesting work being done in Cube satellites, and how are students being engaged?
That's a very good question. So certainly up here, University of Manchester has a space systems engineering group. Their students and researchers recently flew a satellite mission, a very low Earth orbit satellite mission, which required propulsive capabilities in order to mitigate atmospheric drag. we have a company, again from University of Manchester, but on the graphene side called Smart IR, which some of you may be aware of. They've developed very low power, very lightweight, very flexible graphene-enabled panels that look after thermal management of satellites. They actually have some interesting defense capabilities because, as well as managing thermal properties, they can manage optical properties, which means that they are cloaking devices as well. So the work that we are looking to stimulate so it involves the building of a CubeSat here in the Northwest with Northwest capabilities that will deliver data for Northwest entities. Initially, it will be open for all, of course, but the focus is on what we need here in the Northwest. And that is very much based on the interface between businesses and the universities. And so the students and research institutions are at the heart of how we are trying to not only bootstrap ourselves and how we can engage in the space sector, but doing so in a disruptive manner to demonstrate brand new technologies.
Thank you. And I've also received a question from David at Trump Limited, who's interested in how clusters are looking into the manufacturing, and are lasers an important tool to work with, and how much manufacturing is going on in these clusters, or is it more R&D? So is manufacturing a focus, or is it more R&D focused?
It's both. It's both. So again, I can only speak for my region. We have something up here called ETIC, which is the Electech Innovation Cluster. This is a self-organized cluster of businesses around North Lancashire and South Cumbria, around Morecambe Bay, who do a huge amount of defense electronics work. So they have self-organized to help each other, to support each other, and they're looking at a range of sectors. And they are my go-to. I go straight into them and talk to them about space to help understand. So that manufacturing side is really important. Manufacturing actually only takes about 15% of the space economy, if truth be told. It is growing as launch capabilities come online. That will be a larger feature of the UK space economy. However, the use of the data will always dominate, because we don't send the satellites up there for fun. We build them and we send them up there to return data, and it's the use of that data that will always have a greater value. But we do work with, the advanced manufacturing institutes, the materials technology centers, these sorts of things, so that for us in the Northwest, manufacturing is critical in developing the space economy.
Thank you. And maybe I'll just endorse that from the point of view of the Space South Central. So we likewise work with manufacturing organizations, large and small. So we've got on the sort of smaller end, Harbin, for instance, here, close to Portsmouth, but also bigger players like BAE and Airbus. And although our focus has been pretty much on satellite data, satellite as a service, if you like, to date, we're becoming increasingly involved with the upstream side as we evolve. And I think Joel wanted to come in.
Yeah, just to say, there's different types of manufacturing capabilities across the UK in areas of space, and one of the things we're trying to do is link those together to look for, I'm not sure whether there's a term, there probably is a term, I just don't know it, like innovation pathways. So if you're trying to develop some bit of technology, and actually you're looking for certain types of manufacturing capability, testing equipment, to test out new processes, how do you link the different facilities together into a sort of pathway that helps you get up the TRL ladder? So we're trying to do that through bringing together the activity in different clusters, and there's facilities all over the place. I know I was talking to someone yesterday about Westcott, where they're 3D printing bits for rocket engines, and from a laser perspective, it kind of depends on context, but I know that there's a really big focus on laser comms, excuse the pun, I guess, laser comms and optics, as well as power transfer as well. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of activity happening in that area, and I think it's an emerging one, and maybe one where there's probably going to be more facilities for testing, developing R&D that will then lead into more widespread manufacturing.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you both, Alan and Joel. I don't think there are any further questions, so it's probably time for me to wrap up this really informative session. Thank you very much to our panelists, Alan and Joel, and to everyone online for participating. I should just correct something I said earlier in terms of the Space South Central. At the moment, the participation of the University of Southampton is aspirational rather than actual, so we're in discussion with them. But at the current formal position is that it's a three-way partnership: South Coast Centre of Excellence in Satellite Applications, University of Portsmouth, and the University of Surrey. Vicky, if you could post the final slides, I'll please, and I'll just bring the proceedings to conclusion. Okay. Well, we don't have the slide, but yet, but it was really just to highlight that this online Orbit South Coast was a bit of a one-off. We're normally face-to-face. Here we go. So our next event is going to be on 21st of September at our base at the Technopole, just to the north of Portsmouth, very easily accessible. 21st September, 11 till 12:30 with a free lunch, and we've already got speakers lined up from Airbus and PA Consulting, and that we'll no doubt be looking to add another speaker to that lineup as well. So so something to look forward to there after the summer holidays, 21st of September. And next slide, please, Vicky. Yeah, just finally, do stay in touch with us. We have our web presence, we have our monthly newsletter. Please do get in touch with us anytime. We're always happy to collaborate. Unless Chloe and Vicky need to prompt me for anything else, I think it's just time to say thank you very much for today. It's been a great session. Once again, reiterate my thanks to our speakers, Alan and Joel, and to you for joining us. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.